What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our course preview for this week's Baycurrent Classic. Got ourselves a new event and a new golf course to break down as well. And here, this preview going to get you ready for all of your exposure this week with a hole-by-hole breakdown of what to expect. We'll go through the scorecard, also some of my modeling and comp courses that I'm using for my analysis to try and find some of our top plays of the week. And anytime you have a brand new video to break down, I love the challenge of trying to break down that puzzle and figure out exactly how it's all coming together. So without further ado, we've got a lot to go through here. Let's start it off with some of the course details and what to expect at Yokohama Country Club. We've got ourselves a par 71 setup and a 7,315 yard golf course. And though that's not overly lengthy, you've got some longer par 4s, especially on the back side of this course. It is an extremely tight course when you miss the fairways. They've got wide fairways. They are about 35 to 40 yards wide in some cases, but just about 5 yards off the fairway in either direction are places that can pretty much be considered out of bounds. You're talking about heavily wooded areas that are all general areas on the golf course, spots where there's some foliage, heavy bushes where you're not even going to be able to find your golf ball there. So when you miss these fairways, you're going to be taking spot and line relief or even redropping like you're hitting it out of bounds. So it's just an extremely hard golf course, I think, for your people that can't keep the ball in play. So that's going to put a priority on driving accuracy, in my opinion, and also with your second shot, because around the greens at this course, there's a lot of undulation, a lot of up and down elevation change as well from fairways to greens, which means that when you get around these green complexes, there's a lot of waves, there's a lot of shots where you're going to have the ball above or well below your feet, and the bunkers also have that kind of waviness to them as well. So I think your players that can keep the ball and play off the tee avoid those pretty much out of bounds hazards that you have everywhere, and also avoid those difficult around the green shots are going to survive this week. And I think a winning score, it's going to be really hard to predict before we hear from the players themselves, but minus 10, maybe minus 15 is what I'm expecting. I think there's going to be some scoring, especially because the two par 5s in the front are extremely scoreable. Worth noting as well that there's only two par 5s at this par 71 setup, so it is a very unique par 71 as well. Adding on top of the fact that we got some Japanese golf this week, it's just a lot of things that are unique for this specific event. But the golf course, I think, is going to be a great test. It's going to be penalizing when you hit shots that are offline, both off the tee and into the greens. And when we take a look at the scorecard, you're going to see it's a tale of two halves. The front nine is a par 36, the back nine is a par 35, but the front nine is over 250 yards shorter than the back. So this is really where you're going to make a lot of your birdies. Your first par 5 is only 536. It is a bit of a dog leg, but if you hit the short stuff, everyone can reach that 1 and 2. The next one's only 529. Same thing. The tee shots are tighter than some of the other holes at this golf course, but you get rewarded handsomely if you put the ball in position. So those should be two pretty much auto birdies if you hit a good drive. Hole 3 is a short par 3. You've even got some potentially drivable par 4s. They mentioned moving up the tee box at some of these, like 8, which is 357. But then on the back side, it is a much more difficult 9. You've got 13, which is a potentially drivable par 4, but then you've got holes like 16, which are 237 as a par 3, 475 as a par 4, 508 yards as a par 4, 510 at hole 11 for a par 4 as well. That side's going to be about survival. So when you're looking at scorecards, when you see somebody like minus 2, maybe minus 3 through the first 6, 7 holes, just know that the round's not over. They're going to have a lot of that difficulty towards their backside, and they are going with hole 1 and 10 setups for all 4 rounds. At least that was the initial report from the PGA Tour. If that's the case, then guys starting on the back 9, if you can get out of there with an even par or better round, you're going to feel fantastic heading into that front side, which is easier. And though not all the holes on here are exactly the same or even in the same routing as what we're going to have, this overhead view is going to give us a good sense for what we're going to get this weekend. You'll see pretty wide landing areas, but as soon as you get off of them, it gets really problematic. And 16 of these next 18 holes that we're going through are going to be in the rotation. I'm not 100% sure the 2 that are removed. I know one of the 2, but most of these holes are going to be in play this week. So first off is a 440 yard par 4, pretty straightforward. I would say one of the easier holes that you have out there, but these greens are not massive. We don't have an exact metric from the tour on how big they are, but they look to be about maybe 5,500 square foot, so smaller than your PGA Tour average. Huge problems if you go long of this first green. You can see all of that natural area to the back and all of the different types of shots around the green that you can face. You've got rough if you miss way off to the right. You've got this fairway area in front, and then of course the bunkers in the natural area over the back. So I think this is going to be a great test for these players. Next up, we've got the short par 3. This should be hole number 3 based on the scorecard yardage, and you can see here that is one of the larger greens on site. sights, but what you don't get an appreciation for from this overhead view is all the undulation that you have on this golf course. And, I spent some time watching some YouTube previews, people playing the golf course, so I could get a sense for what these players are against. These bunkers have that wavy undulation. Also, the entire golf course has a little bit of that wavy undulation all to it. And if you miss the green here, especially to a short-sided pin, they're not going to put the pin in the direct center like we're seeing on this overhead view. It could be a very difficult up and down. So I think there's always going to be that emphasis on the iron play. That's the most important part about golf. But in general, these Japanese style golf courses are not easy, and you really see the ball strikers funnel their way towards the top. And I think that's what we're going to get here at Yokohama. Next up, you have a hole that I think is removed. You don't see anything close to this on the scorecard, so we're going to skip it. I think it's one of the holes that they're just not utilizing. Next up, we have a hole that is going to be utilized. It's one of those long 500 plus yard par fours. A tree in the middle of the fairway too. So imagine if you hit that, you're one of the lower ball hitters, and then you're back here at like 260 yards, and there's a water hazard towards the front right of this green complex. So this should be a hole that plays well over par, and though it is slightly downhill, it's still going to play 480 plus. Next up, you have a 520 yard par 5. This is going to be one of the holes that's included, and like I said, a little bit of a dog leg, slightly tighter fairway than some of the other ones at the course, but if you hit the short stuff, you're going to have about 220 yards to the center of the green, so extremely reachable for everyone in the field. Next up, we have a hole that is 337 yards. I believe this is on the backside, or let's double check on that. Yeah, this is hole number 13 as opposed to hole number 6 for the regular West Course setup. But this is a drivable par 4. However, they have a tree in front of this green complex. So unless you have a lot of power, that might dissuade you from taking it on, because if you end up behind this tree or even just under it, it is going to make that shot into the green a little bit tricky. Next up, we have 7, which is 513 yards. This is one of the longer par 4s, which I believe was deferred to the backside of the course, but a little bit of a dogleg from left to right and a wide landing area. You can see like they're giving you a wide enough target to attack. Your bombers, if you have a good week with your accuracy, you're going to be at a massive advantage because of that. But if you miss to the right, lost ball. And as I mentioned, this is all the general area. There are, at least to my knowledge, very, very few penalty areas at this golf course, which is for design. If you hit it offline, they want you to feel it. If you hit it into this and you can't find your ball, you're re-teeing. Even if you find the ball and you're shit out of luck, they're not going to let you take that lateral hazard drop. You're either going to have to find a spot in line with the pin location where you can drop, or you're going to have to re-tee. So I think that's where a lot of the difficulty this week is going to come in, and why I think accuracy is going to matter. 1 round sample sizes, people are going to get away with these awry shots, but not over 4 rounds. You're eventually going to get into a spot of bother. Next up, we have 386 yard hole. I believe this is in the rotation for the course. Short pitch and putt par 4, so this should be one of the easier holes that we have. Hole 9 is 242. This is part of the course and is a downhill par 3, so it's going to play a little bit shorter than the scorecard yardage, but a small landing area and definitely going to be one of the hardest holes out there. They did note, though, that the tee box at this hole is likely going to be moved up for at least one of the 4 rounds. Next up, we have 10, which is 513 yards. This is another one of the longer par 4s, which will be in the rotation. This is another hole where they're also adding some difficulty. It's more wide open off the tee. You have a little bit more room to the right. Like if you hit it under those trees, you're going to be okay and get it up close to the green. You miss left, though. It's one of those spots where you might be hitting a brand new tee shot. 11 is 422, so a mid-length par 4, one where you could conceivably make a birdie on it, but it's not quite the birdie hole of the drivable par 4s or the par 5s. Hole 12 is 186 yards, so pretty conventional par 3. Only thing to note is that it also plays downhill and has a very small green complex, so that's going to be a hard green regulation to hit. Next up, we have 13, which is 542. I believe that this par 5 is either taken out or a par 4, or it's maybe the other par 5 that we have. Very small green complex, though. 14's 420, another mid-length par 4. Not much to say there. It's a potential birdie hole, wide fairway area. So these pitch and putt par 4s should be extremely easy for these players. When you're hitting less than driver, like a lot of players are do on this kind of a hole, that much space is enough where you're not going to hit it offline and into those spots of bother. 15's 530. This is another hole that I'm not quite sure if it's the one that's on the course or the one that's taken off. So it's one of these 2 par 5s, will not be a part of the rotation. 16 is 185 yards, another par 3 that's down the hill. That's the case with all of them at this course, and also some of the smallest greens that you have on site. 17 is 333 yards, potentially drivable par 4, but once again, that little bit of a tree in front of the green, which you can tell that's a trend around this course, that might dissuade some of the shorter players from doing so. And then finally you have 18, which is 415 yards. This is not the hole 18 that they're playing for the actual event. The actual hole 18 is 475 yards, so it's much longer than this. It's not the same exact hole, but I believe this one is just moved up further into the scorecard. So yeah, that's the setup that we have. You can see some spots of bother off the tee, some small greens, and in my opinion, this is a very positional, very accuracy first kind of golf course. And then when we take a look at our modeling, this will be what I'm looking for in my players this week. We'll translate a lot of what we just saw and a lot of what we just talked about into what I'm looking for in my plays. And this is a bit speculative. This is the first time that we're seeing the course, but based on, past track records and past courses that we've seen, this is what I'm assuming the course is going to emphasize. And the first things first would be your form heading in. This is your off the tee approach around the green and putting over your last 24 rounds, especially when we have a brand new golf course like this where we're not 100% certain on how it's going to play, or at least we're not 100% certain what kind of stats are going to correlate for that given year. You want to really lean into that form, because always form is going to be important for these weeks. That's always a predictor of success for the events to come. And at an event where we don't know exactly what key stats to ramp up to 25-30% in our modeling, this recent form should be 50% plus. And in fact, that's what I'm doing this week. It's a little bit more important in my modeling than what we typically see, especially that shots gained approach over the last 24 rounds. Off the tee matters, and especially that even the around the green and putting. This is a short game course where I don't think you can sleep on that either, because if you're missing greens, you are going to be penalized. But I'm also looking at driving accuracy, so we're not going to bore you with just going through the form in every category. There's a million different databases where you can do that, and a million different touts videos. You've probably already done it yourself, looking at the best players heading in. But we will focus on are the stats that are specifically catered for Yokohama Country Club. So like driving accuracy, avoiding those massive numbers off the tee, the kind of holes where you can make snowmen even at times, is I think going to matter over 72 holes. So players like a Takumi Kanaya, an Andrew Putnam, a Joel Damon, an Eckroat, or Bazanehout that have all been excellent over their last 24 round sample sizes are going to get a bump in my modeling this week. And you can throw on top of that all these other players that you see in the top 15, top 20. I don't necessarily think that it's a prerequisite for success this week. Like a bomber that's in form, that's being overlooked in DFS, I'll play them. A bomber that's hitting the ball a long way and playing well, I could even still see myself betting outright on a week like this. You avoid the big numbers, you have a more accurate than usual week, you could get yourself to the optimal lineup or even win this thing. But it is an added bonus, because when you're trying to take guys, and this is a no-cut event by the way, so everyone in the field is going to play 72 holes, your guys that are spraying it are in most cases going to run into that trouble. So that's why I'm prioritizing that in my modeling this week. I'm also looking at approach play from 150 to 225 yards. There are going to be some wedge opportunities, especially in some of your easier holes, but the holes where I think you're really going to separate yourself from the field are those longer par 4s and then those par 3s. The par 3s are almost all from 175 plus. The one of them is 168 yards, but a lot of those iron shots coming in this proximity bucket, and then on those harder par 4s as well. So, I think it's going to be a harder golf course than especially what we've been playing over the last couple events on tour, where it's playing -1.5, -2.5 per round. I've got this at closer to even to maybe a -1 scoring average, which is why I'm focusing a lot of my iron distribution there, because if I think it's going to be more of a grinded out fest, more of a go out there and keep par on the scorecard, then that's what I'm going to focus on from the iron perspective. So Rico Hobi, really excellent from that 150 to 225. Akita Nakajima, he's more of a DP World Tour player, but he's from Japan. He's trying to play his quote-unquote home open over here. It's not quite a home open, but a big event in Japan, so of course he's teeing it up. They've got Siwoo Kim, Max Homa, Ren Yonzawa. I haven't seen him play before, so I don't have much of insight on him, but you can see on the small sample size of stats that we have to work with, he's been good in that kind of a range. But your PGA Tour regulars, the guys that we're used to seeing on this list, like an Eckroat, a Hodges, a Woodland, a Kitayama, a Thorbjornsen, a Patrick Fishburne towards the bottom are all going to get a bump up in my model. And I've got scrambling on it as well. Because the course, I don't think it's going to be a pushover. I want to make sure that around the greens being included. That's why we've got that over our last 24 rounds. But also scrambling over that 24 round sample. It says 25 there, but that was a typo. It is over the last 24 rounds. You got a Matt McCarty, Takumi Kanaya. He's been getting the ball up and down a whole lot. Ali Hodges, a Putnam, a Seabez, and a Mao. And when we can combine multiple of these categories, like what we have with Seabez, he's solid from 150 to 225. He's not one of the best in the field, but he's solid there. But he's gaining with the accuracy. He's gaining with the scrambling as well. That's really going to stand out. Ali Hodges, across all three categories that we've talked up so far, is heavily into the dark green. So coincidentally, right, Seabez, number 2 in my modeling this week. Lee Hodges is there at number 9. And then the last category we have would be the agronomy this week. It is bent grass greens. It is zoysia for the rest of the golf course. So sticky kind of grass, not usually the kind of grass that you get a lot of rollout on. So that could add a little bit of distance to this golf course, I would say. But this bent grass stat, if you want to take a look at the people that excel on this type of surface, that is also something that you could find helpful this week. So Takumi Kanaya, he's not only showing up with the accuracy, but scrambling in that bent grass. Somebody to keep an eye on, and obviously has a little bit of local ties going as well. You've got Garrett Kigo, Kevin Roy, you got a Matty Schmid, Gary Woodland, and Matt Wallace that are all towards the top end of this list, that if you can pair up with at least one of these other categories or hot form heading in, are players that you're going to see towards the top 5, top 10. And when we put it all together, Fishburne's number 1, Seabez is there at number 2. I do have to say that these more positional players like a Seabez, a Putnam, or a Takumi Kanaya are my personal favorites. The Fishburnes, the Garrett Kigos that are more so riding that hot form are usable, especially if they're overlooked in DFS, but I have a sneaking suspicion that guys like Higo and a Fishburne are still going to be played, as a lot of people like playing the hot hand during the fall. So I think there's going to be enough exposure there where maybe I'm not as thrilled about those specific options, but like your Kurt Kitayamas, your Maus, your Hodges here that we mentioned a few times during our modeling, or in my opinion, worth a few extra looks in your DFS lineups this week, or from the outright betting perspective as well. Then the one comp course that we have would be the home of the Zozo Championship, which this event is replacing on the schedule, another no-cut event. But Accordia Golf Narashino, Japanese golf course, is a little bit shorter. It's also a par 70 as opposed to the par 71, but it was tight off the tee. When you missed far offline, you felt it around that kind of a track. It was mostly a second shot golf course. I think that this course is a little bit more of a mix of off the tee and approach as opposed to Narashino, which was really all about hitting your irons. But it's close enough, and it's a close enough style of golf and the kind of grass as well, that I think we can use it for a little bit of leaderboard crossover. So, you had last year when Echeverria won, but a lot of good iron players like Justin Thomas or Ricky Fowler, Kitayama were in that top 5. Year before that was when Morikawa won. We know that he's an excellent second shot player, but the rest of the top 5, top 10, you saw that trend over the last couple years. So if you want to use the top 5, top 10, or even the top 20 over the last 3 years to try and find some leaderboard crossover, I think that could be useful as well. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the course preview this week. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Also subscribe to the channel so you guys don't miss any of the content to come, including our DFS and prop preview dropping on a little bit later on this week. Also our live streams for rounds 2 through 4 showdown and props. Catch all of that by subscribing and get notified when all of that goes live. But until next time guys, best of luck with all the exposure that you're entering, whether it's for DFS or with any outrights or betting exposure that you're getting to. And go ahead and comment down below what you've got as the winning score for this week for a chance to earn a free month on my Patreon. And as long as you guys give me the correct winning score, you will win a free month access to all the projections that I have to offer, and it'll be on a first come first serve basis. So the person that correctly guesses the score first will win that access to the projections, which is for DFS, showdown for rounds 2 through 4. On my Patreon page, I also have all the underdog and prize pick stuff that I'm entering for any given slate, and all the research tools that I'm using for it as well. So check all of that out over there. You can join the Patreon page now if you don't want to win it via the giveaway. I'll link in the description to go out there and do so. But other than that, that's all I've got for this course breakdown, guys. Best of luck, as I was saying before, and I'll see you guys for some of the rest of the content this week.